Good evening, everyone. Today I have invited a special guest, Stephanie, to share her story with us. Stephanie is from Korea, moving back and forth between Korea and the US. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder at the age of 20, she has battled her own mental illness for life. At the age of 27, she discovered she has ADHD, and at the age of 32, she discovered that she is autistic. Stephanie has been on a journey of understanding herself and her neurodivergencies, navigating guilt and shame, learning to accept her differences with grace and compassion. Currently an ADHD coach, she sees the beauty in neurodivergent brains and is on her way to becoming a neurodivergence coach to support people navigate the challenges of life with neurodivergencies. Stephanie hopes that through her sharing, parents can understand the internal turmoil and struggle of neurodivergent kids and how to best support their kids. Let's welcome Stephanie.
I'm Stephanie Hwang, an ADHD and executive function coach from Korea living in Los Angeles. I have ADHD, autism, and bipolar 1. And today I would like to talk to you about my journey navigating my neurodivergences and my tumultuous relationship with my mom as she navigated these challenges with me. So I think this journey was uniquely challenging because of the executive function difficulties of ADHD and autism and how that interacts with the pressure to accomplish and succeed in Asian culture. So executive functioning skills are skills we need to create goals and accomplish them, like planning, organizing, task initiation, time management, self-control, and working memory. Both ADHD and autism come with executive functioning difficulties, and although we suffer a great amount of inner turmoil and stress inside, to the outside, it can just look like laziness. Because in Asian culture, we tend to place a great priority on accomplishments, this can create a big conflict between children and parents. So I'll start by telling you about my journey with where I am now. So I've been practicing as an ADHD and executive function coach for a little over a year now. I underwent training for 10 months in 2021, and I currently have over 200 hours of practice logged at this point. So I spend a lot of time talking about ADHD experiences with clients, friends, colleagues. My 20s was incredibly difficult. I spent a decade being chronically depressed and wanting to die nearly every day. I developed bipolar disorder at age 20, did not know that I had ADHD until I was 27, and I found out that I'm autistic just 10 weeks ago. My entire life, I struggled with productivity and what I now know as executive functioning. In middle school, I had a book about organizing time and another book on organizing space. In high school, I bought books about sleep, procrastination, but then procrastinated reading them. I religiously read articles on Business Insider about productivity, but I failed to carry them out in my life because how was I, a high school kid, supposed to successfully follow Ariana Huffington's morning routine, where she wakes up at 5, meditates, exercises, and reads the newspaper? I'm so much more productive now at age 32. But most importantly, I am content and happy with my life. I feel like I have made it. I've made it to where I want to be in life. I have a incredibly fulfilling career supporting people that I feel very passionate about, and I feel like I belong. But it was a journey getting here, and I want to share that journey with you. So I'll start out by talking about my relationship with my mom in high school before I developed bipolar disorder and before I knew that I had ADHD or autism. At this point, my relationship with my mom was pretty bad. Throughout high school, I thought of her as someone always telling me what to do or what not to do, and I hated her. In fact, she was the person I hated the most in the world. I think she had an idea of an ideal daughter, and it did not look like me, but I was very stubborn and I didn't like doing what she told me to do. I was a very bright and self-motivated child that had tested into a very selective high school in Seoul and was excelling academically. So I occasionally won national awards, competed at national level in various speech competitions, but it seemed like she didn't think it was enough. I shouldn't be on the computer after I came home from school at 11 p.m. I should be sleeping so I can wake up refreshed tomorrow to study more. I could always be studying more, harder. Her attempts to motivate me and whip me into shape did not work because it was not what I needed or responded well to. Honestly, I think if she left me alone, I would have done well on my own. I rarely studied because she made me. In fact, I hated being told what to do. Her attempts to control me resulted in me rebelling. I wanted more to not do as I was told. We fought a lot. In addition, I smoked, I drank, and I partied on occasion. None of these things were really out of control. I was just experimenting and having fun as teenagers do. But when my mom found out, she flipped out and tried to exert more control so that I didn't become a juvenile delinquent. Once she took me to a therapist office for problem kids, and the therapist asked me to write journal entries after school each day. So I didn't like the strange man. I was not explained why I was there and why I was writing these journal entries. So I wrote half-assed entries like, I went to school today. Lunch was good. I did homework after. Needless to say, this approach did not work, and I was not his client for a very long time. The whole thing is actually kind of funny. I was never going to become a juvenile delinquent. I was a nerd that wanted to excel in academics at the nerd school that I went to. Uh, but my mom had anxiety, and looking back, I think I craved to be understood by my mom rather than judged. I did not feel safe enough to share my thoughts or my feelings with her. So our relationship at times felt like it was all fighting. To move on to my college years, it took me 7 years to graduate college. I struggled after developing bipolar disorder at age 20. I didn't know yet that I had ADHD or autism, and my family was not familiar with mental health. My parents, of course, were very concerned and thought perhaps that I could not have a normal life anymore with a mental illness. And so they began to try to support me more as I cycled through the extreme mood swings of mania, depression, and hypomania, which is a less extreme form of mania. I slowly accepted that I could not do everything by myself and accepted their support more. Previously, I had tried to do everything on my own because I couldn't trust my parents. I still fought with my mom a lot in college, as she also dealt with my mood swings and the behaviors associated with it. My drinking, smoking, and partying continued. I became heavily depressed, but I did not realize that I was depressed. I drank anywhere from half a bottle to a full bottle of wine each night. My socialization revolved around drinking. I was on my laptop for hours each night. I did everything in bed, including eating and schoolwork. I slept anywhere from 7 to 10 a.m. and woke up at 5 p.m. I was practically unable to go to my classes, and I was failing classes or receiving C's at best. But the truth is, I wanted to get up and go to class and do my assignments and get good grades so that I could transfer out, but I just couldn't. And I felt like shit about it. It was eating me up. And my mom told me that I was undisciplined, unmotivated, and lazy. And I believed that about myself too. But that shame did not make me do the things that I wanted to do. I worried that there was something greatly wrong with me. Will I ever be able to have an office job, which is considered part of having a normal life in Korea? Will I ever be able to wake up on time to go to work? My mom wondered these things too. There came a point where it was so difficult for her to cope with watching me not go to school, just stay in bed and drink, that she enrolled in a master's program in counseling to learn how to better understand me and support me and to learn how to cope for herself. She was not a perfect mother, and she still had deeply ingrained biases and stories about me that I felt in our interactions. But uh, this is the point where she slowly started changing. Even after I moved to America at the age of 27, I did not enjoy phone calls with her because she would inevitably say something that indicated to me that she was being judgmental. Sometimes I pointed them out to her, and she would tell me that I'm being sensitive or that that's not what she meant. I was taking it the wrong way. This was difficult, but looking back, I think it was still progress. I felt safer with her and was able to point out things that were bothering me. In high school, I kept them all bottled up because I didn't feel safe sharing with her what I thought or felt. And so the change in our relationship was very slow and gradual, but over the course of 10 years, we healed and became closer. And she's come to feel like a big support in my life. In 2018, I found out that I have ADHD. And in 2020, 2 years later, as the pandemic hit and I had a lot of time to reflect, I started researching and learning a lot about it. By this time, my bipolar disorder had stabilized so that I was able to focus on my ADHD. I started the journey of vindicating myself from the shame and guilt I carried around being lazy and unable to get things done. It wasn't me, it was ADHD. I had invisible challenges others did not have. I realized I had internalized the stories my mom had about me. Looking back, my depression was not caused just by my bipolar disorder, but also because the lived experience of having ADHD and autism is very depressing. My clients now all feel like they have more potential, but they're somehow unable to reach it because they struggle with executive functioning. We struggle to meet deadlines, make appointments on time, and work on things we want to do. And we feel judged by others around us. We have internalized other people's stories and judgments about us. We wonder if something is fundamentally wrong with us and feel an incredible level of shame around it. This shame in turn makes it even more difficult to do things because as we procrastinate tasks, we think of all the other times we failed to do this and become paralyzed while we are flooded with shame and guilt. So I want you to know that when a person with ADHD is not doing something, it's not because they don't care or they don't want to do it. They are feeling a lot of pressure to get it done perfectly, and they feel shame and guilt that they are struggling with this. Uh, so, for example, in the past, I would have prepared this speech a lot more last minute. I would have felt the pressure to write the perfect speech, whatever that looks like, in the most efficient way possible. Then I would have put it off because of all of that pressure. I would feel shame and guilt as I put off a important task yet again, and then blame myself for being lazy, making it even more difficult to start. Then on the day of the speech, I would feel the pressure and start work super last minute, stressed, and get the speech done moments before the actual talk. Now, since I know better ways to work with ADHD, and because I know that it's not my fault for wanting to procrastinate, being gentle with myself has allowed me to write the speech earlier because I'm not drowning in the shame and guilt of not being able to start. So right now, my relationship with my mom is not perfect, but I can see that we have made so much progress. She tells me that she can see how much I am doing, how hard I work to manage my multiple diagnoses and find ways to work with my neurodivergences. She tells me that she is proud of me, the Asian child's dream, and I feel safer sharing with her what I'm thinking or feeling. I feel supported by her in my life endeavors, and I feel good about our relationship. We've come such a long way. So as I was preparing this talk, I had a chat with my mom. I asked her why she thought we fought so much, and she shared her opinion on how she could have done things differently. So I will share her insights with you, and then we will open the floor up to questions and answers. So my mom said, one, if you have multiple kids, it's important to realize that they are different and may require different parenting styles. So whereas my sister listened to my mom more and thus was an easier kid to raise for her, I was very stubborn and did not like listening to her. So this resulted in her thinking that she should exert more control to manage me and break my spirits, which backfired. She said that looking back, it was a mistake, and she should have acknowledged and realized that I required a different approach to parenting from my sister, and she should not have tried to force things. Which brings us to point two. Accept your child as they are. Love and accept your child. Choose to see your child's neurodivergent strengths and celebrate them as opposed to focusing on their weaknesses and criticizing them. Some neurodivergent strengths are the ability to hyper focus on an interest, drive, passion, curiosity, resilience in the face of repeated failures, empathy and kindness, sensitivity, fun, humor, creativity. I think that's a big one. Being quirky, different, unique. So criticism, shame, and guilt occasionally produces results, but in the long run, it's detrimental to producing results. What's more, as your child internalizes your criticisms, it will over time lead to depression. Depression is very common in people with ADHD and or autism. So instead of judging, blaming, criticizing, ask your child how you can support them. So, instead of criticizing your child for being late, ask your child, how can I help you not be late? Yeah. So three, trust that your child will get there on their own. Try to give your child love and support unconditionally. Trust that they will navigate life on their own and come to their own realizations. They are a separate human being from you. You cannot do this for them, and they will not listen to you before they can see and learn for themselves. So have the strength to just watch them and support them instead of interfering and trying to force them to do this or that. It's very hard to make people with ADHD or autism do things. They can be very stubborn. They need to want to do the things themselves. Four, the relationship you have with your child is important. So my mom talked about a concept called the relationship bank account. If the relationship is in a good, positive balance, then even if you have a fight, there is elasticity and the relationship will recover. However, if the relationship balance is in a deficit, it's not in a good place, then the relationship will have a much more difficult time recovering from arguments. 5, the importance of parental education and learning to manage anxiety. My mom said that learning how to parent and also learning how to manage your own anxiety as a parent so that you can support your children without nagging is a huge help. Yeah, if I were to add something, it would be to find community on social media, such as Facebook groups, TikTok accounts, and Instagram accounts that talk about ADHD and or autism. See what it's like to have the conditions and what ADHDers and autistics struggle with so that you can understand your child better. Ask your kids how you can support them instead of judging and criticizing them. Have them also follow these social media accounts so they find community and realize that there's nothing wrong with them. The things they struggle with is normal if they have ADHD or autism. When I work with clients on ADHD and executive function coaching, we work through productivity hacks, tips, and strategies, but we also spend a lot of time refraining the stories they have about themselves, that they are lazy, unmotivated, undisciplined, and can't get things done. And this is often the biggest block in them getting things done because the guilt and shame weigh heavily on us. We don't procrastinate because we don't physically have the time or we don't know how to do things. When we're procrastinating, we're paralyzed because we're thinking about all the other times we're procrastinating and we're feeling flooded with guilt and shame and wondering what is wrong with me. So help your kids break this cycle now so that they don't continue to struggle as adults. Thanks so much for listening to my story. My mom and I will now take questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. Wow, what a transformational story for you and your mom. And thanks for the insightful tips. So we're going to open the Q&A. But my son is kind of reject the diagnosis, face the reality, how to help him to accept that without the internal shame or guilt.
I think the easiest way might be to, yeah, how about you get them to follow these social media accounts where, like, I follow Instagram accounts and Facebook accounts about ADHD and autism, and people post memes. Kids love memes. It's fun, and it's coming from, it's fun, it's funny, it's bite-sized, so it's just something that comes up on their feed as they scroll through Instagram or Facebook. So it doesn't feel like boring learning. And they'll get a sense of how, oh, there are other people that think like me. And I think it could be a fun way to introduce your kid naturally to this idea without, without telling them all these like boring like symptoms that they should pay attention to. I think it could be like a very fun and educational way to do that.
I want to. Do you mind asking your mom, like, if you like this question? I think she might have some insight herself too.
Okay.
Yeah. But I often got people approach me just say, oh, my children won't even talk to me. How do I even have a relationship with them? Or this is like together, right? So how do you help children to accept the fact or stop the shaming themselves?
Okay. 그러니까 부모들이 애들과 관계를 갖고 싶은데 애가 자기한테 말을 안 한대, 하기를 싫어한대. 그럼
당연하지.
어떻게 해야 돼?
그럼 이제 이렇게 하는 거지. 왜 엄마한테 말하기가 싫을까, 아이들이. 그거는 엄마가 너무 끊임없이 일방적으로 잔소리를 했기 때문이지. 아이하고 관계를 잘 갖고 싶을 때는 일방적인 게 아니고 양방 소통의 대화를 우리가 했었어야 되는 거지. 근데 여태까지 우리가 자녀를 기르면서 항상 일반적으로 주로 잔소리를 한 거지. 근데 그 잔소리는 아이들을 사랑했기 때문에 우리는 했다고 하지만 아이들이 느끼는 감정이 중요한 건데 부모들은 그걸 인지 못하는 거야. 아이들이 느끼는 감정이 중요하고 얘의 생각과 얘의 감정과 의지가 중요한 거잖아. 그러니까 걔랑 같이 소통하려면 어떻게 해야 되나를 부모들이 연구해야 된다는 거예요, 유경아. 그래서
오케이.
대화법을 배워야 된다는 거야. 엄마들은 항상 아이들한테 지시하고 평가하고 질책하잖아. 칭찬보다는. 왜? 그게 더 좋은 효과를 나타낼 거라고. 근데 그렇지 않거든. 부모는 그 아이들을 사랑의 표현을 어떻게 하느냐. 그리고 얘가 내가 말했을 때 어떤 감정을 얘는 느낄까. 그런 걸 생각해 봐야 된다는 거야. 그리고 내가 심사가 아닌 아이들의 관심사를 얘기해야 아이들이 흥미를 가질 거, 말하고 싶을 거 아니야. 그리고 아이들이 지금 흥미를 갖는 게 뭘까? 그래서 부모들이 뭐 만약에 예를 들면 이런 것도 있더라고. 아이들이 게임을 좋아하면 엄마들이 게임을 배워서 게임 갖고 얘기한다라는 거야. 아이들이 만약에 미드를 보고 뭐 넷플릭스에서 뭘 드라마를 본다. 그 부모도 보는 거지. 그래서 걔의 눈높이로 대화를 해야 되는 거야. 근데 부모들은 그냥 자기식으로 얘기를 하는 거야. 그럼 요즘 애들은 하나도 좋아하지 않아, 엄마를. 그러니까 부모는 자꾸 아이의 눈높이에 맞춰야 되는 거야.
So the next one is kind of similar. Say my child has autism and ADHD. He's 18 and always rejects us for communication. We want to help him. How should we do it? I think I know with autism it's a little bit more difficult. But what do you think? What's your answer, Stephanie?
I think what my mom said about the communication between parents and children. When I think about why I didn't want to talk to my parents, it's because I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like I could be heard. I didn't feel like I could talk to them in the same way that I do with my friends at school. Yeah, so I think that is one thing. I think another is for you to learn a lot about autism and ADHD, but maybe like in the perspective of the person that has it. So I guess, again, I think social media accounts are incredibly useful for this. There's also YouTube videos. Just try to get a sense of how your kid experiences life and try to talk to them at their level, I think are two important things.
Yes, definitely. I remember the time when we met with each other that you introduced that book. When you say educate yourself, children too, and parents also. The book I'm reading, the Unmasking Autism. The more I read and the more I understand, I'm like, oh, okay, so my child is this type, right? And just leave him alone. And he's not being difficult, and he is having a hard time. He is not rejecting you. That's how he treats things, right? You understand him more. I think parents, you should educate yourself as well. I mean, that's a wonderful book. I'll let people know about that book.
So for ADHD, I think this book is very useful in understanding how ADHD works. It's very relatable. It's funny and easy to read. Okay, so I haven't read this yet, but what your child wishes you know, what your ADHD child wishes you knew, working together to empower kids for success in school and life.
Next question is a personal message to me. My question for Stephanie, suppose we have autistic parents and significant challenges in helping autistic kids. Do you have any suggestions for parents? Can you help me to ask Stephanie, can we try Stephanie coaching service? That's another story. So how do autistic parents helping autistic kids?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, because I think on the one hand, so this is very common, right? If your kids have ADHD or autism, it could be very likely that one of the parents or other relatives have it. They're both very genetic. So I think on the one hand, you being autistic would help you understand your child and what they're struggling with. I guess it's also important for you to understand. But I guess on the flip side, having autism can often mean that we struggle to understand our emotions, and we have difficulty knowing how to communicate with other people. So yeah, I think the biggest thing would be to learn about yourself and your autism, so that you can relate to your child, but two, also be in a better position to support your child with their challenges in life.
Very good. Understand. Yeah, it might be, you know, when you understand it, like that book, I think it helps me too. It'll help everyone to understand what you're just different, right?
Yeah. Also to add with autism, apparently if one person is autistic in a family, it's likely that relatives, even though they're not autistic per se, they exhibit autistic traits. So maybe like this is the threshold to be diagnosed with autism, but you could be like somewhere here and have a couple of autistic traits. So that's one thing for you to know. And I think there was a question to mom. Thanks, mom. What kind of relationship with your daughter you can expect in the future, and what is your expectation for your daughter?
유경이야, 친구 같은 엄마가 되고 싶지.
Okay.
유경이를 모두 다 이해해주고 지지해줄 수 있는 친구 같으면서도 멘토 같은 엄마가 되고 싶지. 그리고 유경이는 엄마가 봤을 때 너 일을 잘 극복해내고 이렇게 해냈으니까 앞으로도 그 ADHD 이런 분야에서 너가 더 많은 사람들을 도와줄 수 있는 그것이 바로 뭐 어떻게 보면 넓게 보면 인류에 기여하는 거잖아. 이 사회에. 그런 딸이 될 거라고 엄마는 믿지. 너가 열심히 노력을 하니까. 지금 엄마들도 이렇게 열심히 우리 너의 얘기도 듣고 내 얘기도 들으면서 이 엄마들한테도 얘기해줘. 다들 엄마들이 이렇게 열심히 하니까 당신들의 그 자녀들이 다 잘 극복해내서 너희들도 훌륭한 부모들이 될 수 있다. 그렇게 말해주고 싶네. 그 엄마들한테도.
And I appreciate Stephanie. Yeah, you're doing a great thing to support a lot of families with challenges. Thank you. Both. Here's another one for mom. I found one. Perhaps one question for mom. I'm a mom of 3-year twin girls and work full-time with sometimes insane schedules. One of my girls have developmental delays and mild symptoms of autism. I know many moms with special need kids quit their jobs to fully dedicate themselves to the kids. I can't take such a sacrifice, both financially and mentally, but can't stop occasionally feeling anxious and guilty about it. I know that this is not a healthy mindset, but how can I overcome it?
너무 많이 힘들 것 같아. 정신적으로나 육체적으로나. 그리고 너무 불안하고, 응? 근데 또 내가 경제적으로 돈은 벌어야 되는 거잖아. 그래서 너무 많이 이해하지만 너무 많이 이해해서 어떻게 말해줘야 될지 모르겠네.
그러게. 그게 사실 뚜렷한 정답은 없잖아.
그렇지. 근데 이 사람이 그러면서 자기가 지금 자기 죄책감을 느낀다라는 거지.
Yeah.
그래서 그래도 이 사람이 하나 가져야 되는 거지. 나는 뭐다? 나는 엄마다. 엄마라는 거는 엄마라는 존재는 헌신하는 거야. 아이들을 위해서 모든 걸 해줄 수 있어야 돼. 왜? 내가 그 애들은 이 세상에 태어나고 싶어서 태어난 거 아니잖아. 내가 낳게 한 거잖아. 그러니까 나는 걔를 책임져야 된다고 나는 생각하거든. 그러니까 나는 좀 더 어린애 같은 마인드보다는 내가 엄마가 성숙해야지. 그래서 해내야지. 해내야 돼, 유경아. 너무 힘든 상황이지만 해내야 돼. 하지만 또 그러면서 그 엄마도 해내야 되지만 자기 나름대로의 어떤 스트레스를 푸는 거는 하나 개발을 해야 되겠지? 엄마 생각이 그래.
Okay.
有家长想用中文提问的，就是我刚才看到，如果你想提问的话，你直接打在那个下面就可以了，我来帮你翻译。希望还是有人可以用中文提问，如果你有的话，你就打在下面。
请问我可以讲话吗？
可以，你讲吧。
对，然后就是说我儿子有过动症嘛，然后我想问一下，这样的话我要怎么去干预他呢？
你指的干预是指？
干预的是指，比如说他排队呀，然后他等待呀，比如说他吃饭啊、洗澡啊、睡觉啊，每天都要我去叫他吃饭时间，然后时间到了他也自己不下来，然后都要我叫他说，哎，吃饭啊 Kevin， 然后他才下来。不然的话他就不想下来这样子，然后每天睡觉时间也是这样，比如说他是7点半睡觉，然后我不叫他9点了还不下来。
小孩多大了？小孩多大了？
我家小孩子10岁。
Yeah, I think just the first thing that popped up in mind is it seems like your son has a lot of energy. I think helping the son burn off that energy could be a healthy outlet. So, I think a lot of parents could have reluctance to medicating their kids at such an early age. But what doctors say is that morning exercises are like medication to people with ADHD. So I think if you could help your son burn off some energy in the morning, it could help them focus and stay on tasks.
She's asking a 10-year-old, is it good to give him medication? What do you think?
I think that's a very personal matter. I think you should do a lot of research. I get a lot of adult clients saying that they were diagnosed at an early age, took medication, it caused problems, and they went off of it. I can understand why stimulants can be very strong, and it can mean if you start your kids on medication at such a young age, it means as adults they develop tolerance and they need to take stronger and stronger medication. I'm obviously not a doctor and I don't feel fully qualified to answer this, but I feel like, when kids are kids, they don't really need to get stuff done. So I think, unless like your kid's ADHD is like, it's disruptive, as in like, it's so overwhelming for you to manage as a parent, or they're causing like trouble at school or being loud, or the kid is having so much difficulty keeping up with school or something, it's something you can consider. But I think as kids, we don't really expect kids to do so much work. So I think, you can think about introducing that at a later age.
I'm gonna throw in something personal here too. 你去看一下那个童漠男的有一个脱口秀，他刚才讲了一句，就是说孩子就是孩子，他10岁的孩子，他做什么就怎么了，就没关系，让他有个快乐的童年吧。我把他的话跟我的话并起来吧，这不是翻译了，这是我硬加上去的。他其实说这个吃药不吃药的这个问题其实蛮私人的，就是他没有办法，因为也不是医生。所以他没有办法就是给你非常专业的这样的一个解答，但是你要去做一些研究调查，还有就是他的观点就是10岁的孩子他就应该是这个样子的，好像就不用太焦虑了哈。
This is kind of just for my son. He's 12 now. He cannot keep his body still. I mean, in academic, he's gifted. But I mean, he have a lot of behavior issue in the school. Time management is really bad. Organization is like his things is really. It's harder to manage his stuff. Like deadline always missed. I trying to be teaching him how to note taking or something doesn't really help. It just, do you know what I mean? How strugglous it is. And he feel like when the school, like a teacher comes to me says, "Hey, he missed this again. He didn't do this, and he didn't do this." And then let me check with him. He just feel like I'm gonna avoid that because why mommy come to me to talk to him about this? So if how to face those kind of things, any suggestion or something?
First have to get some kind of evaluation and ask for accommodations at school. And I think the accommodations you can ask for are like extended time for exams, or have your son take exams in a quiet room. They could, depending on the school, assign a note taker to take notes for him, or they could connect him to tutoring services. And yeah, so I think the first step is for you to get the evaluation and learn.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Oh, you got the evaluation.
No, I didn't last week. It took
you're
2 weeks
waiting
for
for
me
the
to
results.
get it.
Right.
And then the thing is like academically he actually is above average kids, but he's very struggles with writing You know, he kind of just hard to put his thoughts in writing. And then that's the only thing he's a little bit struggling there, but other behaviors, you know, I mean, it's adds up. And the thing is, he kind of reject what he is, like the awareness of what he has, you know what I mean? Like I kind of reminds him, like, okay, I mean, that's not a shame to have those. It's just like whatever you have, we just stay there. But the thing is, I don't know. He's 12, like a teenager now, and I don't know how to do these things like with him.
Yeah,
I'm very
I can
anxious. I'm
understand.
just telling you, I'm very anxious for that. You know, like,
Yeah,
what should I
yeah.
do?
Yeah, and you're new to this, so you don't know what to do. And I think the amount of support you can expect from school is also limited because school teachers are underpaid. They don't have the bandwidth to really support your child. Once in a while, you'll meet an amazing teacher, but yeah. So I know that some schools offer tutors for neurodivergent kids, so I would look into that. I think it's also
I had outside tutor for him, but it seems
Mm,
like still like he even doesn't want to tell like what he struggle, why he cannot finish his writing, you know, the homework thing, and then it's kind of like he doesn't really discuss about this issue, and I was like,
yeah.
feel like I give him the office like a service, but like he doesn't use them very well to handle his stress because he have anxiety too, he have stress too when he doesn't, you know, the school come to me and he just
So I think if your son, rejects the possibility that he might have these diagnoses, it's probably the best to just let him be for a while and not try to force it on him. It's gonna take some. It's a process. When we first find about things like these, it's not like, oh, I have ADHD. Okay, now I'll just move on with my life. We go through this process of accepting it. There's like the denial and grief stage, and then bargaining. So I think even for an adult, it takes a year or two or even three to accept this. For adults, they often feel sad about the loss of potential. If I found out when I was 12, would my life have looked differently? Things like that. I think the other thing is, so other learning disabilities such as dyslexia are very common with ADHD or autism. And by the way, I read a statistic somewhere that 30% of people that have ADHD are autistic as well. So I think, you mentioned something about reading and writing. It might also be worthwhile seeing if your son has dyslexia. But
yeah, I
yeah,
also
again,
did this evaluation too. I doubted he has that too. Exactly.
okay.
You know my son well, even you don't.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. So I think I want to point you back to the thing I told you about. I think a very fun way to educate young kids about neurodivergences is get them to follow like social media accounts, like Instagram accounts, the people that have these posting. So it's very relatable. Memes are fun. Kids love memes. I love memes. It's a great way, it's a great, fun, low pressure way to learn about things. So I would recommend looking.
As parents, you said that we should follow the social media account, also the kids. Why? You said those people are very mean.
Yeah, so I think the important thing is finding the right community. If you find a mean community, don't follow it.
Oh, okay. Well, you mean to find the nice one, not the mean one. Okay.
Yeah. It takes some time to find
Yeah, I can at some point try to compile a list of some of the accounts that I follow that have very positive things to say about neurodivergences, and share Facebook communities as well.
Yeah, do you have your community, Stephanie? You have a community?
How do you mean? Like my own community?
Yeah, your own. Yeah, your own.
Oh, no, I don't yet have something. Well, I have a small community for just my coaching clients. But I follow a lot of social media accounts, and I still learn a lot about them. So I can share some of that with you. And a lot of questions I'm seeing is a quick question, how did Stephanie learn English? So I moved back and forth America and Korea as a child. So first time I came to America, I was 6. I do have pretty developed linguistic abilities, but yeah, I was exposed to English at a young age because of my dad's job. So I didn't move to America 5 years ago and speak English like this. And another question is, a lot of people are wondering what makes me think I'm autistic because I might not look like a typical autistic. So yeah, I think the thing is, there's a very like stereotypical idea of what we think autism looks like based on media perceptions. And, you know, I think it's like the socially awkward, nerdy guy that's shy and says weird things, has weird interests and hobbies. So my experience getting diagnosed with, well, finding out that I'm autistic it was so much more difficult than finding out that I have ADHD, because I think the ADHD experience is so much more universal. It looks very similar in a lot of people. But with autism, I have a lot of autistic friends also. They're very different. Everything is, it's kind of like case by case. But what the Autism Unmasked book talks about is that for a lot of people that aren't like a white man, they can't afford to look like they are autistic because it's not acceptable in society. So you find ways to blend in. So you mask your true self, your autistic self, and learn how to ways to look like you don't have autism. So I think the thing that was hit the most hard for me was like this journey of belonging, because I think autism is something that makes you feel like you don't belong. It's everyone else gets the rules, they're in on it, but you somehow don't understand how social interactions work and you feel shut out. You feel rejected by other people. And I think this is an incredibly isolating and difficult experience. And I think that is the core part of autism that I identified the most with. So yeah, I guess in short, I want you to know that autism doesn't look like one thing. It can look like many different things. And especially for women or women of color, we've had to find different ways to blend in to make things work in life. And I think you can find out more if you read the book.
Yeah, I asked that question. I'm a speech pathologist and a professor, so I was curious what make you specifically think you are autistic. I know there's a wide range of symptoms. Because you look like, definitely it's a high functioning. I was just thinking what bothers you as a person with autism.
So what was interesting is when I found out this book, I realized that I had somehow unmasked without knowing that I'm autistic. So I found out ways to be my authentic self with other people instead of pretending to be a version of me that I think other people will like. So I think, yeah, again, the thing I related the most was this experience of not fitting in. But I had to dig deep because I had to think about not where I am now, but what I felt like when I was a kid, or maybe even like early university, because by now I've developed so many coping skills that I've come to a point where I think the biggest challenge I had with autism is this understanding how social interactions work, understanding what people mean when they're talking, because we tend to take things very literally. And I think Asian culture is very high context culture where we imply things and you have to read between the line. And that was really difficult for me. And I always thought I struggled with that because I'm a third culture kid. I grew up between Korea and the US, so maybe I don't understand Korean culture enough. But later I realized, oh, it's because I'm autistic. So yeah, I think as much as I feel like I belong and I have friends that understand me and I feel at home and at family with. I think before I figured these things out, it was just so tough, feeling like I didn't belong. Other kids didn't understand me. I was on the outside. Even in my family, I felt like my mom, my dad, and my sister were like a real family, and I was kind of on the outside. So I think all of these isolating experiences were what I identified the most with. I found out that a lot of the childhood traumas I have are connected to the experience of being autistic. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much.
I think it's not important if you have the diagnosis or what. It doesn't matter. If you, I think the thing is, if you feel you're different and then you keep feeling years of shame, and that's the thing you overcome, and then you don't try to become a typical person. You have your own journey. I think that's more important than the diagnosis, the paper. That's my opinion.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, for sure, because a psychiatrist told me in 2017 I might have ADHD, which means I saw so many mental health professionals in different countries for 7 years, and no one ever was able to see that I had ADHD, because it's such a lived experience. It's baked into our daily lives, that it starts to look like your personality. So it's very difficult for a professional to diagnose these things sometimes, unless it's like so obvious.
Yes.
So I think self-diagnosis is it's a lot more accurate in many cases.
You're different.
I agree.
How to accept you who you are, right? That's a lesson for a lot of us, a lot of parents, and a lot of adults. Maybe children become adults. I think the first thing is that, oh my God, this is how I'm gonna do it, and what are my children are gonna become in the future? What are they gonna do, and stuff like that. That's the shame to ourselves and also the shame to our children. So I think that's the first step. Just be accepting what it is and who you are, who your children are. I think, Stephanie, that's a very good framing of like your journey. I think that's the most important. Yeah, I think we have to. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. There's a lot of questions more. So yeah, there are a lot of more questions here, and I know we cannot finish the questions. But if we have more time, and we try to maybe have smaller groups and then try to answer more questions. But before we end the session, I want to ask both Stephanie and Mom, if you just one sentence or brief, what do you want to tell everyone here? First you, and then you tell your mom what she wants to tell us.
Okay, wait, let me tell my mom so she has time to prepare.
이 사람들한테 일단 너희들이 이렇게 너희들의 자녀를 위해서 이 시간에 이렇게 많은 사람들이 모여서 토론하고 그러는 것들이 굉장히 놀랍고 존경스럽다. 그리고 너희들의 사랑하는 자녀들이 지금 힘든 시간을 맞이하고 있지만 너희들의 이런 노력으로 인해서 그 아이들이 하나의 독립된 인격체로 잘 자라리라고 믿는다. 그리고 너희 엄마들도 항상 자녀들을 믿고 지지해주는 그런 부모가 됐으면 좋겠다.
Okay, well, she said it doesn't happen quickly. It's a process. It requires a lot of patience. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. That's a great summary. That's everything. Thank you.